Hello, and welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk with immigration attorney Brian D. Lerner. In this particular episode, I'd like to talk about uh, the EB-5 petition. Now, the EB-5 petition isn't for everybody. Just like all visas are not for everybody. I've done other videos on the EB-5, and essentially that is the visa where, I mean, bottom line, you have $1 million to invest, or it's 500,000 if it's going to be in a targeted or rural area, or you're going to go with a regional center. And it depends, but what I'd like to concentrate on this particular video is if you have basically the required investment not to go in a regional center, but to do your own business. And again, that's normally $1 million, but if you happen to be investing in a targeted, which is essentially a low-income area or a rural area, then of course that would go down to 500,000, and I have information on what areas that would be. But for all intents and purposes, let's just assume for this particular video that it's your own business, and what do you need to do? What do you need to submit in order to make a successful EB-5 case? Because unfortunately, some people think that they just plop $1 million into an account and the United States will go, come on down. And it doesn't work like that. You have to realize that the adjudications officer, it doesn't get paid any less or more by approving or denying your case. The adjudications officer has the job to make sure that all the evidence is there, that the evidence is sufficient, and that all of the requirements have been met in order to be submitted with the EB-5 petition. So given that, if you honestly, if you get an attorney somewhere that says, yep, I know somebody in immigration, or you think that the person has connections in immigration, it's not true. Okay, they rotate the officers around to prevent this type of thing, and the connections that supposedly might exist, they may exist, but they're not going to be in the EB-5 arena. So the best way to get an EB-5 approved is to do what's required, to submit the necessary evidence. So let's get into it. What evidence is really needed in order to go forward with the EB-5? Well, you have to show it's a new commercial enterprise, okay? And there's ways of showing it's not. For example, if you're going to take an old business basically and show an increase in the capitalization of it and so forth, but for the most part, people will start their own new commercial enterprise. That's the entrepreneurial spirit. They want to do their own thing. So what do you need to bring? Well, what do you need to show? Well, you need to show an organizational chart for the new enterprise and organizational documents. Now, this will include articles of incorporation, certificates of merger and consolidation, depending if the company has been merged, partnership agreements, limited liability agreements. Basically, the first organizational document will show all of the items that show it's a valid corporation or partnership or whatever it is, and that also includes the bylaws, the articles, the shareholder agreements, the stock transfer ledger, it goes on. So you need to make sure you have all that. Next, you need, of course, have a business license or authorization to transact the business in whatever state or city you're going to be in. Clearly, if you open up a business and you don't have a license, you're not going to be able to do business. So this is a relatively easy document to get. You just apply to whatever the city is, their city hall, and for a few $100, give or take, you can get yourself a business license. Now, if you are going to invest in a business that exists, okay, which again you have the opportunity or the ability to do that. Maybe your type of EB-5 is to find clothing stores per se and turn them around so they become profitable, and you put your own mark on it, whatever it happens to be. but you have to show that the required amount of capital for that business was transferred after November 29th, 1990. Okay, which, for all intents and purposes, since we're talking here today, that normally this is normally not an issue, but still yet it is a requirement, and you do have to show that the investment has increased the net worth or the number of employees by 40% or more. This is not an easy thing to show. Okay, you can't just say, it was making $1 million in 1995, and now it's making, $2 million. You have to the net worth and so forth all has to be defined, and you have to have charts and graphs and numbers, and generally when you do this, you do need to hire a good CPA who is able to analyze all the numbers and provide an accounting and to provide expert analysis as to how and why it has increased over 40%. Okay, now next is the capitalization. Of course, this is where it all comes down to. This is the money that you're going to invest in the business. Now, one would think this isn't a big issue to show, but it is. Okay, again, you can't just have a bank account in an American corporation that one day has zero and the next day has $1 million in and say, okay, I've capitalized. It doesn't work like that. It needs to be much more specific, and there's various things that you need to specifically show. Now, one thing for sure is you need to show the capital is at risk. Okay, so by taking $1 million and putting it in the corporate bank account in the U.S., that does not show that the money is at risk. In fact, it's not at risk at all. It's not like if you have it in some third world country somewhere where if you put the money in there, you're afraid that it might disappear 3 months later, or there might be a government coup or whatever. By simply putting the money into the account and probably getting interest on it, it's not at risk, and there's been lots of case law to show that. There must be an actual commitment of the required capital in order to show that it is at risk. The investment has to be made, the company needs to be purchased, the equipment needs to be purchased, the leases need to be signed, all of this stuff to show that, if the company doesn't run or if it goes down, you will lose your investment. That's the bottom line. That's what it means at risk. It means there is a risk you'll lose your investment. So, at the beginning, EB-5 petition, be sure that you submit the bank statements to show all the deposits in the U.S. account of the enterprise, show all evidence of assets that were purchased to use in the company, and sales receipt, purchase receipt, credit card statements, contracts, all of that. Show if there was property that you have in your home country that you're going to be transferring from your home country to the business in the U.S., be sure that you show that the property was transferred abroad, and you have the bills of lading, you have the fair market value analysis of what the property's worth, because again, this can be used as investment too. So if you're going to, again, have like a clothing manufacturing company and you already have a ton of equipment in your business in China, let's say, you can take, $200,000-$300,000 of that equipment, use it as a capital investment, and transfer it here to the U.S. So you can do that as well. Now, you have to show that the funds were invested in the enterprise or in stock in the enterprise, and that the debts are secured by the investor's assets, which means your assets, which you are personally and primarily responsible. I've had a lot of clients who say, well, I'll just make my business responsible. Let's say you're from Australia and you have some kind of fishing company, that's been real successful over the last 20 years, and you just take a loan out based on the business. That's not going to work. They want to make sure you personally are liable. Now, you can take a loan out on the business, but then be sure you sign the personal guarantee to meet that requirement. The bottom line is, they want to make sure that you have all your interest invested in making this company work, because if it doesn't, the investment's going to go down, the business is going to fail, and so forth. And that's what makes it important that you show all of these items. Now, as far as the capital, you need to show that it was acquired legally. Okay, and some people laugh at this, but obviously, if you're going to be coming with $1 million, the thought is that maybe it was from crimes, maybe it was from drug money, maybe it was from theft, it wasn't lawfully obtained, whatever it is. So you do need to show where the money came from. There needs to be a legal tracing of that money. You don't just transfer the money to the U.S. and boom, start from there. It doesn't work like that. We have to go back at least one step, maybe two steps, maybe three, in order that there's no questions that this money was obtained legally. So, if it came from a business, you bring the submit the foreign business registration records, you submit your personal and business tax returns or any other tax returns filed anywhere in the world within the previous 5 years. That helps show the proof that the money's yours. I mean, obviously, if your tax return in Russia shows that you made the equivalent of $15,000, yet you're investing $1 million, there might be some issue as to where you got that $1 million. So, I mean, you can do that, as I just said, but then if the other balance of the money came from somewhere else, of course, you need to show it and prove that it was legal. Okay, you want to have certified copies of all actions, whether civil or criminal or private criminal actions or money judgments against the investor within the last 15 years. Again, this does create a nice story of, for example, you have no criminal judgments against you, and if you have money judgments, they've been paid off, or you won, perhaps a money judgment and you got it based upon some personal injury lawsuit or whatever it is, or you got it through gift and so forth. Now, when money is given by gift, that is a difficult thing to prove, because you can't just say, it was my 21st birthday and my mom gave me $1 million. No, you need to have, again, a trail of where that money came from. The donor has to then show that the money came from lawful documents. So if, for example, your mother gave you $1 million, that's fine, but the mother's going to have to sign certain documents stating that she gave it. Of course, it will have to be an absolute gift with no strings attached to it. And then we need to see where her $1 million came from. Do you see? So it does stretch a little bit as far as where all of the money came from in order to meet this particular requirement. Now, the mother can, or father or family can also loan you the money. That's fine too. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's gifted or loaned, but if it is loaned, it has to be real. It can't be on a piece of paper saying, I loan you $1 million, but if you don't pay it back, well, that's okay. No, it has to have teeth in it. It has to be a real loan. And for example, if you don't pay it back, they get the lien to your house. Okay, they get the deed to your house, and they can put a lien on it and so forth. So, whether it is a loan or a gift, just make sure that it's backed up with sufficient documentation to show that it really is a loan or a gift, and then go the next step and show where the money actually came from. Now, the next big element of evidence that you need to submit is to show that you're creating employment. Now, with the EB-5, of course, you need to show that the commercial enterprise will create at least 10 full-time positions for qualified employees. So, if in fact it already has created the positions for the qualified employees, then of course you can submit the photocopies of the relevant tax records. You can submit the I-9 forms, the quarterly tax reports. There's all kinds of documents you can show, the payroll stubs, the payroll records, everything to show that those employees actually exist. But in reality, the vast majority of EB-5s do not submit evidence such as that because they don't yet have the employees. So that's when you have to have a comprehensive business plan that is created, which shows where the employees will be hired and what divisions, when they will be hired, what they're going to be doing. You have to show the names of competing businesses and their relative strengths and weaknesses. You have to show the comparison of the competition's products and pricing structures, a description of the target market and prospective customers. It goes on. I mean, the business plan, when I say complex business plan, it really is. You have to include marketing strategy, pricing strategy, advertising costs, servicing and organizational structure. You have to include sales, costs, income projections of all of the markets that you're planning on getting. With respect to the employment, you have to set forth your personal experience and what your background is. You have to look at the staffing requirements, job descriptions of all positions, and the timetable for hiring. Just so you know, you come through my firm prepares this for you. It's not that we do it, with magic and just magically it appears. Of course, you have to answer different questionnaires and, provide certain documents, and then we guide you along the way. But as you might imagine, a business plan is not the easiest of documents to prepare. But if it's prepared properly and it's coherent, you can look at it and the adjudications officer will be very clear on where all of these jobs will be coming from. So the other, one of the other big areas of documents that you need to provide is the managerial capacity of the investor. Obviously, if you're going to be investing $1 million or so in some business, some commercial enterprise, you have to show that you are going to be involved in the day-to-day managerial control of this particular company, and this can be shown by submitting a comprehensive job description and title that you will be doing once you come to the U.S. You will show evidence that you are a corporate officer or you're on the board of directors, or you can submit evidence that you're involved in the direct management activities or policy activities of this particular enterprise, and you have to show all the duties and so forth. So that is, and this is a nutshell of what's needed, but that's essentially needed. Now, I keep saying that the one thing with the management, though, if you're 18 and you're coming to, 18 or 20 years old, and you're coming to do an EB-5 versus 45 or 50, obviously, as a younger person, you're going to have more difficulty proving the managerial capabilities that you have in which to come here. That's not to say you can't do it. There's nothing in the regulations that say you must have a degree, you must have 20 years of experience. No, that doesn't say that. But if you don't, then of course you do have more to prove. Now, I've been saying throughout this particular video that you have to have $1 million basically to invest. But again, if you can show that it is in a targeted employment area or a high unemployment area, then the amount of investment will be a lot less, meaning half. It'll be only $500,000. So the high unemployment areas are where the particular unemployment is 150% of the national average. So you want to show evidence such as the method in which the statistics of unemployment that you're submitting were gathered, the date of the designation, and the boundaries of the subdivision in which you are claiming is 150% unemployment of the national average. Obviously, if you submit a document from the Great Recession showing that, and it's 3 or 4 years old, that might not be as persuasive as something that's 6 months or less old when you submit the petition. Now, if it's going to be in a targeted employment area, there are what's called metropolitan statistical areas, or MSAs. Again, come to my firm, I'll research where it is you might want to invest, see if it is or is not in an MSA, and then we go from there. And, of course, you do have to show in a high unemployment area or metropolitan statistic area show a town of which has 20,000 or more, so the population is important in which to determine. Obviously, if it has less than that, it may very well be considered a rural area, because generally you don't live in a city that has less than 20,000 people. But again, if you're going to be investing $1 million in a business, it will be difficult to make that succeed if there's not going to be a lot of people around, of course, depending on what type of business you have. Okay, so what I've gone over now is just the basics of what type of evidence you need in order to submit the EB-5. I've shown essentially it's just not a matter of investing, and saying, there's my, please give me my green card. So if you like the video, click like, click subscribe, and you can go ahead and email me in order to find out how to get a consultation, and we can go from there. More videos coming. Thank you.